Folks, last week, our region became a much more dangerous place. If you haven't heard already, the Solomon Islands has signed a security pact with China that allows armed Chinese police to be deployed to maintain social order. The precise details of the arrangement haven't been published because the government says it doesn't have the approval from the CCP. There you have it. Not even a month in and already China is dictating terms to the Solomons government. So when its Prime Minister Sogavare says a permanent Chinese naval base won't be allowed in Honiara, is that really his call? China's paying a lot of money for this pact and will want something substantial in return. This is a foreign policy failure, a red mark against the Morrison government. Even though it's been a world leader and stood its ground by pushing back hard against Chinese economic coercion, China has now slipped through the back door and is a step closer to having a larger military presence, less than 2,000 kilometres from our army and Air Force bases in Townsville. When the Morrison government became aware of the deal, it did not send the Foreign Minister Marise Payne or even the Defence Minister Peter Dutton, but a junior minister in the form of Senator Zed Seselja, which feeds into the notion that some Pacific nations feel we don't take them seriously enough. I asked Peter Dutton about this when the deal was signed.
Well, Pete, you can ask the same question of New Zealand, who's got a very close relationship with the Solomon Islands as well. Prime Minister Ardern didn't go there. Her Foreign Minister, her Defence Minister didn't go there. And again, it's based on the intelligence. There are months of discussion that inform the steps along this pathway, informed by the Chief of the Defence Force, the Chief of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the other agency heads, our ASIS and ASIO intelligence heads, and that was the decision that we made based on the best advice available to us. So shooting from the hip without the intelligence, without understanding what it would mean to roll in there with all guns blazing, it's a dangerous statement.
There are many reasons why this is a national security problem. Not only does it make Australia more vulnerable to an attack and covert surveillance, our fuel imports from the US could also be hit. The Solomon Islands lies directly between the US and Australia. Remember, our fuel reserves onshore are already at woefully low levels, well short of the required 90 days. I put this to our Energy Minister, Angus Taylor. If China militarises the Solomon Islands, would that not interrupt sea lines of communication and our fuel supply from the United States?
It could well do, Pete, and that's why we need to have our own supply of crude and refineries that can process that crude.
See, that's the point, right? So that's what I was referring to there. If you've got a crisis such as China militarising Solomon Islands, then we don't have the 100 days of fuel that's required here onshore.
And you've been big on this a long while, Pete, which is why I assume you're a very strong advocate of the Beetaloo Basin and opening up the Beetaloo Basin, making sure we can refine our own crude oil.
What I'm concerned about is that we don't have enough here.
Well, but if it's finished product or crude oil, it doesn't matter. You've got to import it. The only way to be in a position where you've got a supply which can keep circulating is to have your own local production, Pete.
The US government must once again be muttering about what's going on down under. 7 years ago, Barack Obama was furious that our government rubber-stamped a deal allowing China to lease the Darwin port, another national security slip. Joe Biden sent Kurt Campbell, the National Security Council's Indo-Pacific coordinator, to meet the Solomon Islands government. There was nothing he could do but warn that if China establishes a de facto permanent military presence, power projection capabilities, or a military installation, then the US would have significant concerns and respond accordingly. You can make up your own mind about what that means. But shouldn't this be our problem? The US has had to come in and attempt to mop something up in our own backyard. This shows a few things. Our over-reliance on the United States. And if China was to militarise the Solomon Islands, there's not much we can do. That's despite Morrison declaring a red line on the weekend.
Working together with our partners in New Zealand and, of course, the United States, I share the same red line that the United States has when it comes to these issues. We won't be having Chinese military naval bases in our region on our doorstep.
Declaring red lines is dangerous. It can backfire, as the US government knows. Remember this?
We have been very clear to the Assad regime but also to other players on the ground, that a red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized.
Assad went on to use chemical weapons, and the US did nothing. Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong called this the worst foreign policy failure in the Pacific since the end of World War II. Labor has its defence faults, notably slashing defence spending, but in this instance she's not far off. The islands are key to keeping sea lines of communication open. Any historian will tell you how important these islands are in any war in the South Pacific, and is why so many Allied forces died trying to protect them in the Second World War. The government says the Solomon Islands is its own sovereign nation, in charge of its own affairs. That is true, but engagement could have been deeper. Diplomacy should have started a long time ago. After all, there was enough warning. Sogavare's intentions were clear when he flipped allegiance from Taiwan to China 3 years ago. We should all be alarmed by it, and in the middle of an election campaign, it's a political gift to Anthony Albanese. Thanks for watching. To support this channel, please like, share and subscribe below. See you next week.